It all began with THQ, a game publisher that has licensing agreements with the different sports and entertainment creators. At its peak, THQ had rights to some of the most influencing content creators in the world: DreamWorks Animation, WWE, Disney, Pixar, and Nickelodeon were actually regular partners of the THQ. It was one of the most influential and profiting games publisher of its time. In 2003, THQ was trying to make a GTA caliber game. This is how the Saints Row was created. Open world games were in demand with the success of the Grand Theft Auto. THQ wanted to make a game that could rival the Grand Theft Auto series. The company has already acquired Volition Entertainment, and they cancelled the high-style game called Underground to focus on creating an open world game. In the year 2003, Volition invited its staff to present different ideas for a new game. The meeting was concluded with the idea of developing an FPS gang simulator. The development of the Saints Row started as a gang simulator. Now the developers were working on an open world map. Initially, the game was developed under the name Bling Bling for the PlayStation 2. Many of the Volition's employees disliked the idea of a gang simulator for a variety of reasons. Some said that they did not want to be part of the gang simulator, while others thought that the idea of the game just wasn't a good one. Volition shifted the game from the PlayStation 2 to Xbox 360 to the demanding nature of the game. The new game was actually known as Saints Row. For the time being, the development of the game was in a complete disarray because Volition had no idea about the specifications for the Xbox 360. Finally, the developers presented the title to the management, and it turned out to be a disappointment for the management. THQ was not spending any more on the game, so it was instead released. Surprisingly, the game did well, and Volition decided to make a sequel for the Saints Row. Saints Row, by the way, was released on August 29, 2006. Now, the game was criticized for its lack of original ideas, but it still was a success. There were two similarities between Saints Row and Grand Theft Auto. Volition wanted to make an identity for the game that sets it apart. Saints Row game emerged when Grand Theft Auto created the foundation of the open world games. Many were calling Saints Row a GTA clone. The leader producer of the series, Greg Donovan, wanted to show that there is room for more than one game in the open world genre. Volition wanted to create a different outlook for the game, while retaining the core identity of the game. While Grand Theft Auto was moving towards more realistic gameplay, Saints Row was moving towards light-hearted experience. The release dates for both Grand Theft Auto 4 and Saints Row 2 were closer, and people were expecting something new. The basic design of the game remained untouched, but the engine of the game was overhauled. The overhauled engine opened a wide range of possibilities for the game. Saints Row 2 world would function independently without interference from the player. NPCs were much livelier and reacted to the environment. The game had better graphics, and NPCs could also interact with each other. The developers also added humor to the Saints Row 2, even with the physics of the game were transformed for the new funny tone of the game. This time the playable character was livelier because it was not mute anymore. The plot continued from the original game, but it was accommodated for the new player because at the time Saints Row was coming to multiple platforms. The PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 received Saints Row 2 on October 14, 2008, while the PC version released in January 5, 2009. The game created its identity as a gang-oriented open-world game with a dark humor and RPG elements. Saints Row 2 received mixed reviews on PC, but positive reviews on the console version. However, the game was a commercial success and led the series to become a best-selling video game franchise. Driving mechanics of the game created more problems than solutions. Many thought that the vehicles were just there to provide a GTA environment. Saints Row made its identity as an open-world game with a dark humor, but its GTA clone identity remained to some of the extent. Saints Row franchise was gaining success, but THQ was going downhill. After the success of the Saints Row 2, the team began working on Saints Row the Third. By the September 2008, development of the Saints Row 3 had begun. The developers wanted something different for the new Saints Row, while keeping the humorous identity of the game. Saints Row the Third was made on a concept of making everything as fun as possible. The setting of the game was also shifted to another city. Now the game was developed to provide memorable moments to the player. The idea was to make it as crazy as possible and provide a game that provides memorable and awesome moments. November 15, 2011 saw the release of the Saints Row the Third. Now Saints Row the Third was the first gang-oriented game to provide a city that can completely be turned into a war zone. The absurd movement of the game made it into a different kind of a AAA title. The game was critical and commercial success. Now Saints Row the Third would become the last Saints Row game being published by THQ before they went bankrupt, and Deep Silver took over the franchise. Now that Saints Row was a major AAA franchise, Volition prepared for the fourth part of the franchise. Each Saints Row was a better version of the previous game, because there was something new. With Saints Row 4, developers pushed the boundaries of the Saints Row franchise. Unlike other games in the series, Saints Row 4 introduced superpowers to the game. The inclusion mechanics of the superpowers drastically changed the gameplay of the Saints Row franchise. New superpower-based gameplay changed what Saints Row meant as a game series. All of the vehicles became showpieces because they were not needed anymore due to the newly introduced powers. Superpowers changed the identity of the game, and many thought that Volition wasn't sure what to do with the series anymore. The newly introduced gameplay mechanics impacted the sales of the game, and many were not interested in what it was offering. Volition did not provide an exact number of sold copies, but the game sold 1 million copies in the first week of its release.
I'm sick of perdition, so tired of tradition, but now my time has come to go break.
The game was not as big a success as its predecessor, but it did well enough for Volition to continue the series. Saints Row 4 received a standalone expansion called Get Out of Hell. Now Saints Row the Third was released on the Switch on May 10, 2019, and Saints Row 4 has also been released on the Switch on March 27, 2020. Agents of Mayhem continue from the alternative ending of the standalone expansion. Get Out of Hell tried to provide an alternative ending to the game. Now, the alternative ending was supposed to return Saints Row to its original style. The expectations regarding the Agents of Mayhem were high, because players wanted to see the old Saints Row once more. Now, released on August 15, 2017, Agent of Mayhem became another disappointment for many. The game was a little bit of a different direction, but still it was not a Saints Row game. There were no character creations, no Saints Row-like open world machines. The only identification that it shared with the Saints Row was Volition color and some of the characters. Saints Row also shares the universe with the Red Faction series. Ultra Corporation is the biggest connection that the two series share. Developers have also confirmed it. Next installment of the Saints Row franchise is actually in the development. Saints Row is focusing more on a futuristic setting, so we might see some more similarities, but it will mean that the end of the Saints Row as we know it. THQ was out of the business and most of its assets were acquired by Nordic Games. To keep the identity, Nordic Game was renamed and now it's known as a THQ Nordic. To get all the franchise of THQ identity, THQ Nordic announced that the acquirement of Koch Media on February 14, 2018. Koch Media is a parent company of the Deep Silver. Now in August 2019, it was announced that Volition was developing a new Saints Row title. THQ Nordic was supposed to make an announcement regarding the game in the E3 2020, but now that the E3 has been cancelled, we might see another announcement through perhaps their website. Saints Row began as a GTA clone game, but evolved with time to the point where the identity of the series is a complete disarray. Well, alright, thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe, I'll see you guys all later, and as always, have a good one.